Way back in 1990, the Ultimate Warrior was primed and ready to take over from Hulk Hogan's iron reign on the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 6. Hogan was keen on crossing over into the mainstream with an eye on making movies, brother, and Vince needed a new Superman to take his place atop the mountain in the WWE. The Warrior fit that time of superhuman superstar wrestlers perfectly. He was straight out of a comic book. On paper, the Ultimate Warrior had a huge upside, a unique look, an even more unique promo style, an incredible energetic entrance, not very good in-ring skills, but hey, that never stopped Hogan from getting over. It seemed like a no-brainer. It was time for Hogan to hand over the torch. For a couple of years prior to WrestleMania 6, Warrior had torn through all the competition in short squash matches that hid his shortcomings, lifting the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam 88 in Madison Square Garden after beating the Honky Tonk Man in just 30 seconds. The Honky Tonk Man had held the belt for over a year, and the fans exploded when Warrior finally upended the Elvis ripoff. The fans really did seem to be behind WWE's newest megastar. The pop was huge. The Ultimate Warrior really did go toe-to-toe with Hulk Hogan in terms of merchandise sales on his ascent to the main event. In that first match between Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, the fans rallied around the two men, some remaining loyal to the Hulkster, some cheering Warrior on. Apart from Andre the Giant and perhaps Randy Savage, nobody had believably come close to knocking Hogan off the top spot. The match was really unique in that it featured two babyface heroes, both champions in the main event of the year's biggest show. It was a unique situation for the time, and fans could feel that this was an unprecedented pairing, and Warrior could realistically be the one to beat Hogan for the belt. WrestleMania 6 at the Toronto Skydome held the live gate record of $3.4 million for years, largely off the back of this main event. In the build-up, the promos went back and forth, and despite the Ultimate Warrior basically delivering unintelligible nonsense during his promos, it was clear that he was a real contender. The match itself saw the Warrior shrugging off several of Hogan's blows. It was almost as though he was impervious to pain. Warrior gained the upper hand and finished Hogan off with his Warrior Splash. As the Hulkster raised the arm of the Warrior, it looked as though the Hulk Hogan era was finally over, and the era of the Ultimate Warrior was just beginning. Or so we all thought at the time. Hulk Hogan had sat on the throne as King of WWE for an incredible 4-year reign. Would the Ultimate Warrior top his tenure? No, was the simple answer. Warrior held the belt for just 9 months, an incredibly short amount of time for a WWE champion at that time, and he would lose it to Iraqi sympathiser Sergeant Slaughter at the 1991 Royal Rumble. His loss to the Turncoat came at just the right time for Hogan to make a heroic return just in time for WrestleMania 7. Hogan would later go on to say that he didn't think the Ultimate Warrior was ready to become the #1 babyface in WWE. The man set to lead the wrestling world into the new decade and beyond had failed. WWE was forced to change focus from muscle men to smaller superstars in the wake of the steroid scandal, and WCW was just finding its footing in the early 90s, still not sure of what it wanted to be. By 1996, WWE was in a difficult place business-wise and was starting to panic about the future. 1995 had been a terrible year for them both financially and creatively, and WCW was starting to rally on what would be an assault that almost put Vince McMahon and friends out of business. The Ultimate Warrior would be rehired by WWE briefly at the start of 1996, when the company was becoming antsy and started throwing anything against the wall to try and rally interest in the product. Warrior would squash Triple H in less than 2 minutes at WrestleMania 12 before being fired prematurely due to not showing up at house shows. It wouldn't be until August 1998 that the Warrior would resurface in WCW, completely unadvertised on an episode of Nitro. Hogan was in the ring and cutting one of his usual promos. The lights went out, the Warrior emerged, and the crowd popped big time for his return. This would be the high point of the Warriors' entire WCW run. The downward slide began almost immediately as Warrior picked up the microphone himself and rambled on for 27 minutes, more than twice as long as originally scheduled. The only salient information that comes from the promo is that the Warrior and Hogan will eventually wrestle again at some point. Week after week, WCW fans were subjected to absolute nonsense from the Warrior as the cheers turned to total apathy. Warrior cut nonsense promos, appeared and disappeared in puffs of magic smoke, developed telepathy, and introduced the One Warrior Nation. And it was clever because the initials were the NWO backwards. The War Games match concept is one of WCW's few good gimmick matches. It's a real shame that the last one ever presented by the company is the one from 1998. It's often overlooked that the Warrior WCW run included this awful travesty of a War Games match. However, I'm going to make a separate video covering that match itself, it's so bad. That was the first of 3 times that Warrior wrestled, in inverted commas, in his WCW run. Eventually he reunited with old tag team partner Sting to take on Hogan and Bret Hart, a match in which Sting wrestled about 6 of its 7 minutes. Probably a blessing in disguise that Warrior didn't contribute any further. He left his jacket on for the entire thing. The Warrior taunted Hogan and friends backstage by leaving his logo graffitied on Hogan's locker room wall and appearing in his mirror. Now, I was totally a WCW fan as a kid, one of the few British teenagers that actually preferred WCW over WWE between 1997 and 1999. But that time, Warrior appeared in Hogan's mirror, his WCW wrestle crap at its finest, and even I'll admit, WCW produced a lot of wrestle crap. I would normally be inclined to knock Hogan's acting skills, but he sells the hell out of being spooked by the apparition. If only he'd put this level of effort into Thunder in Paradise, it might have got a second series. We can see it, Hogan can see it, but Bischoff, who's standing next to him, can't see it. WCW had totally missed the point with all of the hocus pocus they surrounded the Warrior with, as magic was never what got Warrior over in the first place in WWE. Supernatural bullshit is always lame in wrestling unless the Undertaker's involved, and even then, it's still pretty lame. All of this total nonsense led to Halloween Havoc in Las Vegas, and finally the showdown between Hollywood Hogan and the Warrior. What a build-up it had been. By the time the contest happened, all of the intrigue about the rematch had fizzled out weeks ago, thanks to the Warrior's overexposure and nonsensical storyline. What is often overlooked is that the match started in a relatively promising fashion. Hogan took the early advantage with clubbing blows to the back of Warrior, bringing him to his knees. Warrior sold it pretty well. Hogan then worked the Warrior's arm in an effective manner before Warrior reversed it. A shoulder tackle from Warrior sends Hogan reeling to the outside. So far, so good. Hogan spent too much time on the outside before getting back in the ring for the reset. Warrior challenged Hogan to the test of strength, but Hogan elected to attack Warrior in the corner with more clubbing blows and kicks. And then the match went to shit. Warrior on his knees as Hogan clasped his hands in the clinch. It was a repeat from the classic blowjob gif camera angle from WrestleMania 6, but this time it seemed to go on forever and ever and ever. It just went on and on. Minutes later, Warrior got back to his feet. Hogan body slammed Warrior and Warrior no-sold it. Warrior body slammed Hogan, who did sell it, God bless him, probably to get some breathing time outside the ring, as after that spot he was clearly blown up. Hogan knocked the referee Nick Patrick out, signalling shenanigans in the near future for this match. Lo and behold, the Giant ran in, leading to a lame accidental big boot to Hogan, and Vincent and other NWO cronies tried to attack. Hogan and the referee were revived, and Hogan started whipping and choking Warrior with the belt, clawing Warrior's face, and leaving us all to wonder what you have to do in WCW to get disqualified. The flash paper botch is the low light of the entire match, as Hogan decided that throwing a fireball in Warrior's face was the only way to defeat him. Hogan fumbled with the paper, unable to get it lit. Warrior stood around as Hogan struggled. The paper fizzled out by the time Hogan managed to light it, but he threw it in Warrior's face anyway. Tragically, Warrior decided to sell it. This match really started to drag on after about 12 minutes, but eventually Warrior started powering up, no selling Hogan's blows as Bischoff distracted the referee. Horace Hogan slapped to the back of Warrior with one of wrestling's lamest ever chair shots, inexplicably knocking the Warrior out, allowing Hogan to win the match and, more importantly, get his win back after all these years. So why was the WrestleMania match considered a triumph while 8.5 years later they stunk out the joint? Well, Warrior would later claim that Hogan wasn't interested in sufficiently laying out the match beforehand, whereas the WrestleMania match was laid out by wrestling genius Pat Patterson. Warrior needed step-by-step guidance for anything longer than a 2-minute squash. The match was rated by Dave Meltzer as -5 stars, it was that bad. The Hogan-Warrior rematch may very well have been amongst the worst high-profile wrestling matches of modern times. Spots missed as bad as guys in their first pro match, but with two 40-plus-year-old former bodybuilders showing even less mobility and athletic ability than you would almost ever see in the ring. A babyface who clearly wasn't over, and a heel that they clearly didn't like either. The Warrior was paid $1 million for his WCW run. I mean, fair play to the man, that's $333,000 per match.